Welcome. Welcome to Satsang. Thank you for being here. When we have this practice of coming to rest in a stillness of being, and it has become a more normal practice, that perhaps it doesn't just happen during satsang, or it doesn't just happen in meditation, but it becomes the way of being, because we want to be rested in the truth of our being as we engage with this dynamic, transitory life that we have. But when it becomes so normal or easeful to stop and just be and know what that is, and to be able to come to rest in our being, just in our simple, pure beingness, we can forget that most, without a practice, are not doing that. 100% of their day, from the moment their eyes pop open, it's feeding the personal self. And there is a personal self, certainly, obviously. But it's not the whole truth of who we are. In fact, it's a very brief, transient experience. But mostly, if we're not paying attention, we're just feeding that self with all of its needs for validation and external love. And for the world to behave and others to behave in particular ways so that we can feel at peace or happy or love. And even with a practice, and even a strong or consistent or stable practice, within which typically the mind does quiet down over time, because it's not getting engaged with constantly. Every thought isn't being believed and followed and given attention. So that after a while, they quiet down a bit. But even with that, if we just sit for a few moments, we might notice the mind still is just constantly got something that it's thinking about. How am I going to do this? Or how did I do that? Thinking about the past, thinking about the future, thinking about how to get somewhere other than where we are. And how to create something other than what is. The mind's just habitually wired that way. And so one of the practices that we use is, especially coming out of meditation, but it can happen at any time, is the practice of intentionally not naming the moment, the situation, the things going on. Because it's usually just the database, the programmed, conditioned self that's narrating what's happening. You know, the ego mind is typically going, what's happening? What's that? What does that mean? What does that mean? What's happening there? Do I want that? Do I not want that? Do I need that? Is that a threat? Is that a value? I mean, that's its MO. So it's a beautiful practice to practice not narrating what's happening and not naming things. And it's a powerful practice with our eyes open. It's actually easier with the eyes open. With the eyes closed, the mind really can go nuts. But with the eyes open, just to be in the world and go, I don't need to name all the activity and the things in order to have an experience. We start to recognize we have a more authentic experience just being with something rather than narrating its qualities, benefits, what we like about it, what we don't like about it. And it's a wonderful practice for noticing the mind's habits. First time I ever came out of a meditation and I was guided to that practice. Okay, open your eyes and just be in the world and don't name anything. And I was a pretty good meditator. I had a fair amount of stillness in my life, but I'd never done that practice. And I opened my eyes. I went, oh, okay, I won't name anything. I'm certainly not going to name that chair and that cushion and that. Oh, damn it. All right. So we just start again. Oh, wow. Oh, that was interesting. Okay, start again. And then I'd sit, and I remember it was in Arizona in Sedona, and I had a beautiful backyard with Thunder Mountain in the background, just beautiful wilderness. So I was like, all right, I'm not going to name anything. I'm just going to sit here in all of this amazing beauty. I just named it. I'm not going to name anything. I'm not going to narrate. I'm not going to make up stories. I'm just going to be here with this incredible rocks with that sunlight shining on me. How beautiful that. Oh. And we practice this simply to practice witnessing the mind and practicing not having to go with, believe everything that the mind thinks, makes up, imagines. And it's going to be especially important in these times that we're living in. It's always been important, but to be able to be in a world that is perhaps going to be even more tumultuous, where there very well might be even more resistance all around to what's happening. Whether it be politics and policies, or whether it be a world event or a volcano going off or floods or something. To be able to practice being in the world, rested in an unwavering grace. Grace meaning truth. To be rested in an unwavering truth of being. That is peace. So it's not that we don't live in a time perhaps of chaos, but to not get so swept away in it all. A time of difficulty, maybe a time of loss. and to be present, to be at peace with our upset, our grief, our sadness, our anger, our sense of injustice or difficulty. Or confusion or unknown, like what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen? Maybe I can't pay my rent this month. Wait, what's going to happen? To be able to be in that very real dynamic of our lives and remain unconditionally present to and aware of and at peace with the world as it is and with ourselves as we are. So let's start with a little meditation. To take this moment, to take an intentional moment of time that we live in. We live in the world of time in this incarnation. To take a moment and interrupt the habitual narration and thinking and opinions and judgments, and control and manipulation and fixing. And to see what is here when all of that takes a break. So we go to the breath. And by go to the breath, it literally means bring our attention to the physical act of breathing. Pointing our awareness out of the thinking and into the body. And to occupy that awareness for a moment with the simplicity of breathing. Noticing the rise and fall of the chest and belly as we bring the breath in and out of the body. And recognizing it's not necessarily about emptying the mind of thoughts, because good luck with that. But perhaps it's about recognizing that all thoughts are empty. Not all of our thoughts need our attention all of the time. Bringing awareness back to the sensation of breathing. And perhaps starting to notice there is something present. an awareness of each transient thought, an awareness of each transient feeling and sensation. Recognizing that we are both the form and the formless. And though time bound in this physicality of form, in the eternal, you are formless. The consciousness of being, the essential nature and eternal nature of our being, doesn't go away during this lifetime when we come into form. It doesn't take a break. It doesn't say, oh, you're going to have a human life? All right, I'll go spend the next 80 years, 90 years having pina coladas, and you'll come back. The essence of our being is the essence of our being. And we get so wrapped up in the form that it veils the knowing of that boundless nature, that formless, boundless nature of the consciousness. That actually isn't inside of this form. This form is happening inside of the consciousness. It's like the sky and the weather. The sky is present, and the weather happens within the presence of the embrace or the beingness of the sky. We are both the form and the formless, and we forget our formlessness. And when we are disconnected from our divinity, we will feel not enough. Because we will be disconnected from our wholeness. And what if we gave up, surrendered all the agendas, just as a practice in meditation? What if we surrendered all agendas? Surrendered such an identification with the personal self, the transient body, mind, ego story that we call me. What if just as a practice we let that go? Recognizing I am not that which is transient. I am not that which comes and goes. I am the awareness, the unwavering, unconditional, loving awareness of everything that appears and disappears and comes and goes. And it's a real practice of faith, because so many will say, I'll surrender that when I've got proof that there's more to me than that. Something that I can feel safe with. But that's the ego saying that I can feel safe with. And it's like a leap or a falling backwards. That's often a nice way to feel into it. What you're seeking is not ahead of you to be found, to be discovered, to be created. What you're seeking is behind you. It's what you've always been. It's what you've been walking away from and moving away from for the most part our entire lives. Trying to find an identity, a belonging, a meaning, a self. Who am I? Who am I in the world? Who am I in the world? You, tell me who I am in the world. You, tell me who I am in the world. The situation, tell me who I am in the world. And meanwhile, the who I am is just resting, unwavering, ready in the background, and we're turned away from it. So it's a nice practice to feel the surrender of, what if I just surrendered all of this efforting and doing and trying to be and become and just fall back. Into the embrace of a self that's always there. Always loving. Always allowing. Always at peace. And when we empty, calm all that noise, all the habitual activity of mind, and the associated triggered emotions. When we practice calming that, like the light of our being can shine unencumbered. The light of our being can shine into this world and engage with this world unencumbered by all the stories and programming and conditioning and ideas and judgments, and resistance and clinging and seeking. When all of that relaxes, the light of our being is known. When we can be less identified with the individuality of this incarnation, of this temporary human experience, when we're less identified with the parameters of the form of body and mind and ego story, when we can self-inquire and say, what if that's not all there is? What if I just put that down for even 3 seconds? Would I disappear? Is there something to me beyond the temporary physicality and thinking and emotions and sensations? When we can put that down for a moment, and then maybe a longer moment, and then maybe a longer moment, when we can surrender that, or that surrenders to something more, the formless nature of our being, we can then start to know our oneness, the shared consciousness of being, the shared light of God consciousness. And perhaps recognize, oh, I am that. Oh, I am that. I am the formless, temporarily experiencing the form, but I can remember my formless nature, my spiritual being, the peaceful consciousness of loving awareness that I am. I can know I am that. And within that, there's an experience of a human life. There is the awareness of a human experience. If I am seeking peace, love, belonging, wholeness, and I am seeking that from the external world, and if I'm seeking from my mind to behave and my emotions to always stabilize in order to know that peace and that love and that wholeness, then I am bound for a life of suffering, because the world does not behave. The world is in a constant state of change. The world of form is always changing. And we form thoughts, and we form beliefs, and we form self-images. Those are part of the world of form, and they're always changing. And this is why we practice, because it is hard to not get so lost in our individuality. It's so compelling. It's so immediate. And it's so habitual. And this is what awakening is. Awakening is every time that we remember truth, there's an awakening. And to practice that on a regular basis, not just in meditation, but just walking through the day. Oh, here's an experience. This experience will change. I'm thinking things, I'm feeling things, the world around me looks a certain way. All of this is going to change. What doesn't change? The awareness of all of it, the unwavering grace of awareness. I am that. I am that which does not change. And there's the peace. And it's stable. And it's always there. It doesn't come and go. It's just whether or not we're pointed our awareness to it. Like, have you ever had a single thought every moment of your life? No. A single emotion? No. Sensation? Nothing. Nothing has been consistent. Even your idea of self. Hell, that changes 5 times a day sometimes, depending on if life's going well or if we just got disparaged by somebody or, But the one thing that has never not been present is the awareness of all of it. We get lost in all the experience and we forget the peaceful awareness of consciousness that we are, the formless. And I am that. Oh, there I am. There's a great analogy. We were talking about Rupert Spira earlier that he uses about a room. Like if we took this room and we asked this room, tell me about yourself. If we asked the parameters, the shape of the room, tell me about yourself, it would say, oh, I'm a living room. I'm 20 feet tall and 15 feet wide and 30 feet long, and I'm a living room. And we go downstairs and we go to another room. He said, tell me about yourself. Oh, I'm a kitchen. And this is my shape and my dimension and my purpose. That's like us, right? The room. Oh, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm a professor, I'm a teacher, I'm a mother, I'm a father. This is the role I play. I'm 5'9", I'm 175 pounds. That would be nice. 180 pounds, 185 sometimes. So, right? This is who I am. I was born here, I speak this language, this is my nationality, and all of these, we're just describing the parameters, the dynamics, the functions, the features of the room. But if we ask the space in the room, this stuff, tell me about yourself. Well, what's there to say? Say you call yourself a living room and you over there call yourself a kitchen, but the space, are you different? And the space would go, no. The space that's currently occupying a kitchen and the space is currently occupying a living room, and the space outside that window, are those different? Right? Who am I? Who are you? Are you the body-mind story? Or are you the consciousness within which that body-mind story is happening? Like if all the walls of this room just came down, this is like the meditation or practicing. What if I didn't have a story? What if I didn't have roles? What if I didn't have an identity? What if I didn't have, all these histories and stories? What if I didn't have all that? Who would I be? That's like if all the walls of this room came down and the space that's, quote, in the room was merged again with the space outside of the room. Would the space change? No, it's the same space as outside. It's all just the space carved up into all these particular forms. And all the forms forget their spaciousness. What if we could live like that? Playing the role of the living room, but recognizing the space within the living room. What is that made of? What's the essence of that? Within this body, mind, ego experience, or within what is the body, mind experience happening? The oneness, the one that we all share, the shared consciousness of simply being. Cynthia is here. This is. Yeah. Oh, there I am, she says. There's the peace. Yes. Oh, there I am. Yeah, it's just a beautiful thing to sit in these moments of remembering, of waking up. Who am I really? And finding this ubiquitous, unwavering presence of peaceful awareness. It's like, wow, it's always there. I get lost in the movie. I get lost in the activity. I get lost in all of it. And we want to have movies and activity in a life. It's just that we what a beautiful thing to experience all of that and know that you are the boundless grace, truth of loving awareness. And when all this ends, you'll still be that. And that doesn't stop when you're born and come back when you die as a human being. It's present the entire time. And we can go through this life remembering that. And then acting as that, rather than the personal self that needs to defend. When the wrecking ball comes to take away the building may resist and go, shit, no. But the space, like, you can't harm me. Like the wrecking ball could crash through the walls and the walls are destroyed. But then the wrecking ball continues through the space. And is the space harmed by the wrecking ball? No, not at all. Melissa Miller. Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much, Jess. Such medicine as always. We'll listen back in full later. Okay, yeah, she's going to take a break. And Lydia, thank you for joining us, Lydia. She says thank you. Beautiful. Jump over here to Facebook. Let's see here. Okay. So, thoughts, shares,
Yes.
reflections.
So, how can you remember who you are and not forget again?
How can you remember who you are and not forget? I'll bring it back to you. You're practiced enough to at least have some sense. What do you think it takes? Does it happen? Let me ask it this way. Does it happen overnight? Yesterday, I kept forgetting who I am, and then I'd remember, then I forget. And then I went to a satsang, and it was really cool, or I went to a meditation, or I did a medicine journey, or whatever. And now I've never, and then that was it. I never forgot again after that. Does it typically happen that fast?
It's gradual.
It's gradual. Yes. Typically. Not always, right? You know, it's one of my teachers, Sat Shri. He was an architect named Scott Barber. Had no interest in spirituality at all. Wasn't pursuing it, wasn't exploring it. Passed out at his architectural table and woke up some hours later and suddenly knew who he was as pure consciousness. It was not a pleasant experience. Spent time at the hospital figuring out what's going on. Most people go to India to find the truth. He went to India to find out what the hell was going on, so he could understand this completely different reality that felt like a psychotic break, So for most, it happens gradually. In that gradual awakening, remember we've talked about initially, it's like a spark. You could be in a meditation and go, oh, there I am. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, but I do have rent due next week. And then so it's a spark, and then you forget. And so you practice again. It's like breathing on a spark. If you do that, it's going to turn into an ember. And if you keep fanning the ember, it's going to turn into a fire. And if you keep attending to the fire, it's going to grow until eventually it does become like the sun. It's just self-illuminating, 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 feeding on itself. So it takes time, and what is typically needed in that time? How do you use that time to breathe on the spark? So what would work for you? So you forget. What helps you remember?
Meditating and coming back to it.
Meditating and coming back to it. Right?
But I like to stay anchored in this awareness.
I would like to stay anchored in the awareness. So I want it to be this way, and it's not always this way. And so I'm dissatisfied with it not being always anchored. And I'll be satisfied when it's anchored. Whose perspective is that?
It's a paradox, right? So,
Is it a paradox? Who are you? Unconditional, loving awareness. Does that feel accurate when you're really dropped into it?
yes, but I keep on forgetting it and coming back to it.
Yes, you forget and you come back to it. The one who says, I always want it to be anchored, that's conditional, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So surrender that. Don't worry about it. Attend to your practices and remain at peace. and you'll forget, and you'll return to peace. But in that moment of returning to peace and forgetting and returning to peace, if there is a judgment and a resistance and saying, I don't want that to keep doing back and forth, I always want it to be like this, that's not being rested in unconditional loving awareness, is it? So it's a valid question, right? How do I do that? But then you look at, am I going to be dissatisfied until it reaches a certain level of stability? Because who's dissatisfied? And if you're identified with that, then that's getting in the way of the presence of allowing. So it's the attachment, right? Do the work, do the meditations, practice the analogies, whether it's the sky and the weather, the movie screen and the movie. You know, I remember when I was living in Sedona, there was a drive out to this town called Cottonwood where the Home Depot was. And when I'd make that drive, coming out of the red rocks of Sedona, the whole landscape would open up, and it just always had this, it felt good. It felt really nice. And I remember driving for a long time and having to really go through, wait a minute, who's enjoying this? You know? And if it was different and I wasn't enjoying it so much, which identity is that? Which can I just allow for it to be what it is? And what consciousness is that is shining through my perceptions, my eyes, my sight, my hearing, my smell? So, I mean, you practice it for a while. You in your meditations, in your thinking, in your journaling, on a walk. What is the nature of reality? What is the nature of this pure awareness that I am? And when I'm not remembering that, what's that experience and what's happening then? And one of the quickest ways you can practice remembering is to allow. Rupert, one of my favorite teachers, he teaches true allowing is not an activity of mind. It is a return to the very nature of our being. That is the nature of unwavering, unconditional loving awareness. It allows. The movie screen allows whatever movie plays. It doesn't fight the movie that keeps forgetting. It doesn't fight it. So it seems like a paradox. But only from the perspective of the personal self.
So, in a sense, it's impossible to ever really forget.
So, in a sense, it's impossible or possible?
It's impossible, it's an illusion.
To forget.
Yeah. Because who's forgetting?
So the question is, in reality, it's impossible to forget because the one that is forgetting is just a construct of mind anyway. Right? All of that, even the forgetting, is perceived, yes? By what? So yes, you're right. The awareness never goes away. It's never not present. It even is aware of the forgetting. It's aware of the forgetting. It's a revert where we learn how to pull back out, pull back out, pull back out. We fall into the I'm the forgetful one. Pull back out of the awareness of being the forgetful one. Gangaji is a beautiful meditation around that. Are you the one that forgets? Are you the one who's got it all figured out? Are you the one who struggles? Are you the enlightened one? Are you the confused one? All of these temporary states of consciousness within the one awareness, the one unconditional loving awareness of God consciousness. So that's a wonderful practice. Even the forgetting is perceived by something. Yeah, Dorothy Dillon says awareness is key. Awareness is all there is. Nothing occurs outside of awareness. You've never had an experience outside of awareness? Yeah. But to practice knowing self as that awareness. Oh, there I am. And not that when we're in meditation and we have that sense of peace or equanimity or grace, or calm or allowing, to not identify those as transient experiences, but to identify that as self. Oh, there's the self. There I am, revealed again, revealed again, revealed again. The veil's been lifted, there I am. The veil's been lifted again, there I am. And it's a practice, like anything. It is a practice. It just becomes, when you practice remembering self, truth, unwavering peace as self, when you practice that, your system, your whole system gets attuned to it, gets used to it, remembers it a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And you've been doing it the other way. You've been identifying with the story of self for so long, and it doesn't want to give up. So one is you've got habit of misidentification, and the other is that then when you start to identify with a self beyond that egoic identity, the egoic identity fights back with its wants and its needs, and it gets panicked, and it starts screaming for the things it wants and needs, and that you're not giving it as much as you used to. So it can be tough, because not only do you have a habit of misidentification, when you start to identify with a self that is already satisfied, the egoic identity is going to fight back and try to push you back toward feeding it, feeding it, feeding it. So one of the wonderful ways to remember is that no matter what you're feeling, in any moment, you could just walk through your day at any moment, no matter what's happening, and ask, and what is aware of this? What would happen? Imagine just going through life and you're pretty consumed in it all. What if you just pulled back for a moment and asked that question, and what is aware of all of this? What would happen for you?
I will not forget.
In that moment, would you, because of your practice, right? Would you have a sense of a peaceful awareness as self?
Yeah.
Not as just a concept or an idea, right? But so you'd remember. And your body would become a little bit more attuned to that. Mm-hmm. A little bit more faith would be built, because you'd be like, damn it, it's there every time. Every time. I've never asked that question and not had the truth be present. So it must be there all the time. Wow, that is who I am. Wow, that is who I am. There it is. There. So it's a practice. Faith builds. The bodily experience builds. And I'm thinking about somebody learning a very complicated piano piece. And when they're first learning it, and the teacher's going, all right, now this hand's doing this, but this hand's doing that, and this, you got to see that reach. It's a little bit tough. Man, when the first, I don't know, months, years maybe of playing that piano piece, the student would be like, okay, all right, it's hard. But I'm going to practice. And not just when I'm sitting at the piano. I'm going to be down at the cafe having a sandwich with the one hand, and the other hand's going to be drumming on the countertop, practicing. And after a while, they're just playing. So the one that is dissatisfied, the one that is impatient, the one who even gently judges the forgetting, or maybe not judges, but simply doesn't want it, wants it to change, wants it to be different. We just more and more, we just pull back and say, and what is aware of that? And what is aware of this wanting it to be different? How long have you been meditating and contemplating non-duality?
How to say, a few years, many years?
Yeah, many years.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have more awareness than you did many years ago?
No, it's the same. It's
really?
always been the same in a sense. I have more knowledge.
You have more knowledge.
Maybe I'm more aware of the awareness.
Okay.
But the awareness itself was always there.
Well, it is, yes. But in your experience, we were talking about remembering and forgetting. Do you find that your system, that your structure, your beingness, or your personal experience is probably more consistently at peace or aware of your truth?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
More and more.
More and more. There it is. There's the answer. More and more.
But what I'm more and more aware of is indeed another construct.
Ask that again.
What I'm more and more aware of,
yeah,
this truth and this peace and this love, isn't it just another layer of construct and not the true core awareness?
That's something only you're going to be able to answer. I can't tell you. I mean, my answer would be no, it's not another construct. It's the essence of your being.
Okay.
But ultimately, right, it's going to be something you have to come to yourself through direct experience. When you really get quiet, maybe this is a way of thinking, feeling into a Gaetan. Is it the case that typically you know this, you have a direct experience of this more boundless, formless peace and grace of being when the mind quiets? When you're not constructing, when you're just being. Is just being another construct?
So that's just layers.
Okay, layers.
That are filling up.
Okay.
I'm experiencing love, which is good. And then I realize I am not the love, I am the awareness. But when I realize that, I feel more love.
Okay, I am not love, I'm the awareness.
Yes.
What if awareness and love are the same thing?
Maybe.
Love is just allowing. Because awareness of love is duality.
Right.
So the awareness and love is the one. That's why Ram Dass could say, I love my wheelchair, I love my pain, I love everything. So it's a wonderful contemplation to be with. Is your beingness the purest presence of just being? When you strip away all story and all thinking, do you disappear?
And the ego disappears.
The ego disappears, right? But do you disappear? Something remains, right? Something is untouched. A construct can't be untouched. A construct is susceptible to shifting, to reconstructing. Remember, when we say, and I am that, it's not the ego I saying, I am that. Because that's duality. A separate I. The ego claiming it. This is what the ego likes to do. It likes to claim. For itself the most expansive nature of our being. That's why I like the phrase, there I am. Ah, there's I am. There's I am. The pure I am before any definition. I am wise, I am enlightened, I am remembering. Now I'm forgetting. The I am before any definition, before any experience. I simply am. There's no hard rule around this by any means, but often, kind of typically, 5 to 10 years of building that muscle memory, how to play the music, how to be awake as being. So, meditation, practice, devotion, study, but mainly patience. And allowing. Because that true allowing, which isn't an activity of mind, okay, all right, I'll be patient with this. All right, I'll allow. No, just take it even further. Just not the idea of allowing, but the surrender. I surrender to what is. And to stay on this path, that's key. To stay on this path is key. Not to get, if you're climbing a mountain, you don't give up just because it gets foggy for a while. You devote. If you're devoted to truth, if you're devoted to knowing your truth, what other path is there really? And blowing on that spark, let it become an ember, feed the ember, study, practice, devotion. And as I think you've probably done or are doing, you make becoming a student of yourself, your full dimensionality as a human spiritual being. You make that as a center focus of your life. How do you know you're forgetting? Like literally, like what are your indicators to say, oh, I've definitely forgotten?
I feel less love or less peace.
Okay. I feel less love or less peace. And when you feel that, is that okay?
Some judgment around it.
Some judgment around it. Okay, that's the forgetting.
Yeah.
The forgetting isn't feeling less love and peace.
It's judging.
We get this idea that it's that if we are always remembering the truth of our being, the loving awareness, that we're always going to be lovingly peaceful with everything happening. That we're not going to, that we don't have, that we're going to deny our human experience. What if your indicator started to become more if you are suffering? Your dissatisfaction. Or let's say I wake up at 2 a.m. I've got an Airbnb over here, and some people have moved into the Airbnb for a few nights, and they're not paying attention to the peace of the area. And at 2 a.m, they've got music playing loud. And I go out in the back, I go, hey, guys, come on, man. Please. It's 2 a.m. And they say, fuck you. Right? I'm not going to be happy about that. So am I in a state of loving peace? No, it's frustrating. But there's a difference between being frustrated and feeling the pain and the grief and the sadness of like, wow, there's people like that in the world. That sucks. There's a difference between that and suffering that. Does that make sense? So the invitation would be maybe to just shift it and go, wait a minute, I can have the full range of human experience. Frustration, disappointment, anger. But I don't get consumed by any of them. It can be a real trap to think that we're only in our grace of awareness when we're just grooving, when everything's just fine. Okay, man, you guys go ahead and play music, and all right, that's cool. It's not cool. But I'm going to do what I need to do, and they're not going to shut up, and they're being that way, and I'm going to go find my earplugs, and I'm going to put them in, and I'm going to go back to sleep and not ruminate on God damn it, and they're taking advantage of me, and people like that, and the world's screwed up, and this is all, and I'm going to get you, and tomorrow I'm going to go do, and I don't ruminate on it. It's a bummer. It sucks, but I'm not going to allow it to completely remove me from peace. And that's the practice right there. The non-duality of it, to allow ourselves to have the full range of human experiences and not get lost in them. You might be remembering more often than you know. I'm reminded of the Tibetan monks when the Chinese invaded Tibet and they imprisoned a lot of the monks and Rinpoches. And the monks were like, you can imprison our bodies, you cannot imprison our hearts. Nelson Mandela, right? South Africa. I refuse to hate. I refuse to succumb to the darkness. Even though this incredible injustice is being done and you've taken away my physical freedoms and you're causing pain. But I refuse to let that darken my soul. So the analogy of the Airbnb situation, I could be like, yeah, these guys are really being jerks. And it sucks. But I'm going to put in my earplugs and I'm not going to get lost in hate. I've done everything I can do. And now I'm going to be at peace. Yeah, I've got my sense, Gaetan, is I don't know you that well, but my guess is you probably remember a lot more than.
Actually, I never really forget. It's just that I identified myself even with positive states.
Yes.
And I realized, oh, it's another layer of illusion.
Perfect. Yeah, I identify with I'm doing well when I'm in my positive states. Yeah. Yeah, that's another trap.
Yeah.
It's another trap. Yeah. Beautiful. It's such a good question. Oh man. Let me jump over here. And we're coming up on our time here. Another message from Dorothy and Cynthia. Yes, Cynthia says, yes, making the practice the center focus of your life. And Dorothy, my body lets me know. Anxiousness, tightening, not breathing, self-judgment. Yeah, that's such a good point. And then Cynthia says, thank you. Yes, not get lost in the story or the emotions of the experience. Yeah. The body is an amazing tool for knowing when we are lost in the experience. When we are in the story of victim judgment, making enemies, warring, when we're warring within ourselves, we're not listening to the higher consciousness. We're lost in the story, in the programming and the conditioning, and everything we've been taught about being taken advantage of and making the world right, and those people and that situation, and we're just so lost in the density of the story, the noise of our minds, that we can't actually hear the truth of our own consciousness, of our highest consciousness. So its consciousness basically says, you're suffering. There's suffering here. And I cannot get through to you through your thoughts, through your mind, because your mind is so clouded. So how can I get your attention? Oh, I can make it feel really, really uncomfortable. So in that analogy of the Airbnb guys playing music at 2 a.m, if I'm, God damn it, God, shut up! Oh, they won't shut up. If I'm in that, I know that I am lost in my smallness, in my sense of not being safe, not being listened to, not being validated, not getting my way. I'm lost in some dynamic of my construct. And how does consciousness let me know? It tells you, how's this feel? It feels shitty, it feels anxious, it feels tight. As Dorothy's speaking to here, judgment, it feels like there's such judgment and hate and anger and tightness. And that's consciousness going, yeah, you feel that way because you're believing things that aren't true, because you've lost the plot. And what happens when I go, you know what? Yeah, they're assholes, but they're good. They're doing what they're doing. And I refuse to get lost in hate. Immediately, what happened? My body starts to feel better. That's consciousness's way of saying, yep, you're getting back on track. It feels better, doesn't it? So the body is a wonderful tool for recognizing when we are lost in our narratives, judgments, opinions, beliefs, stories. And then the body is another wonderful indicator of when we're coming back to truth. Because it feels like it lets go, releases, unburdens. Beautiful. All right. So, see if there's any last thoughts here. So the two questions we can ask in any moment. Is what is aware of my current transient, of this current transient state of thought or emotion? What is aware of that? This feeling, this thought this idea, this resistance. I want it to be this way and it's not. It's this dissatisfaction. What is aware of that? Is it transient? Typically, the answer is yeah, it's transient. So what is not transient? I. The I am. Currently experiencing dissatisfaction. I am now experiencing happiness. I am now experiencing frustration. I am now experiencing this. But the I am doesn't change. So the first question is, and what is aware of this movement, activity of mind and emotion? And then what is the nature of this awareness? And typically the nature of that awareness is allowing. And as soon as we allow for the presence of a dissatisfaction, it tends to be allowed to move. Everything arises so that it may pass. Everything arises so that it may pass. We think if we allow it, that we're allowing it to stay. That it's going to go, oh, cool, you're allowing me? Well, then I'm setting up camp and I'm dissatisfaction. I'm never going anywhere because you're not fighting me. You're not resisting me. You're allowing me. But what tends to happen is when we allow it, it goes, wow, okay. Do I want to stay? Dissatisfaction then says, wait a minute, this doesn't feel good. So it tends to move. And also because we've just identified with the truth of our being and we're no longer identified with the one who is dissatisfied. Yeah, perfect. Thanks for the question. It's such a good one. It's so classic, right? How do we stop forgetting? Make those regular questions. And what is aware of this moment? And what is aware of this? And what is aware of this? And what is the nature of this awareness? It's allowing. And what happens when allowing is awake, present, active? And we will typically find a pretty rapid return to the stillness that is in the background of all experience. I am the stillness in the background of all experience. I'm even the stillness in the background of forgetting. Beautiful. All right, blessings. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Not next Sunday, but the Sunday after this, Satsang again.